Okay, so I just got back from watching Jurassic World Rebirth. Just got back, like an hour ago. I'm just gonna tell you what I thought. This is going to include spoilers, so if you haven't seen it and you're really interested in what happens, go watch it first. However, to put it bluntly, if you have seen the trailer, you have seen the movie. Everything interesting that happens in the film is in the trailer, I promise you. So, I'm just gonna start yapping. Just overall, it was kind of fine. Kind of. It was semi-watchable. But if you think about it, for just 30 seconds, as soon as the film ends, and you finally have a chance to digest what you just saw, you will realize that this film falls apart so easily. Easier than any movie I've ever watched. And I've watched the Star Wars sequels, so I really mean it. To start things off, this movie is paced horribly. It takes way too long to get going, but once it does not take a break. It does not take a second to breathe. It just goes and goes, and then it's over. There's no downtime in this movie at all. And yet at the same time, very little happens. It's kind of weird, because there's a 2-hour runtime. Things are moving at a breakneck pace. But once you finish the movie, it feels really empty. Like nothing transpired through those 2 hours. The best way I can put this film is that it is a cobbled together mess of previous films. Almost every scene is in something else. And don't get me wrong, there are certain parts that are interesting. For example, the T-Rex swimming. That was something that a lot of people were really excited about. But it's so tropey and it's so Jurassic Park slop that no part of that scene leaves you on the edge of your seat. And no part of it is surprising. So those are like just my initial thoughts. Now I want to break it down into why it's probably the worst Jurassic film ever made. And Dominion exists, so that's really hard to do. And the worst part, far and away, about this movie were the characters. The characters sucked. There were so many of them, they did not care at all to expand on any of them. None of them were interesting. And you could tell, just from the initial roster, who was going to be cannon fodder and who was going to make it to the end. There were a couple of iffy ones, but they weren't important enough to really care. So immediately the stakes are gone, because I knew who was making it out of there. And I didn't really care about them, and I didn't care about the people I knew were going to get eaten. So that sucked. And on top of that, there were too many characters. The movie kind of dupes you into thinking it's just going to be a simple fetch quest. It's not. There's this really stupid family, we'll get into that, who gets stranded on the island. And the team who's supposed to be collecting this DNA and getting all this stuff, they have to go save them for some reason. In the beginning of the film, there's this Australian dude, and he says, you know, when they get this distress beacon, that they don't really need to go pick them up, because they're doing an illegal mission to go steal, like, this blood from dinosaurs. And there's like 8,000 other people near that boat that can go pick them up. And he's right. He is completely correct. But for some reason, they make this guy, like, the bad guy for thinking that, and then he gets eaten right after. And we're supposed to think that that is justification for him getting eaten. It's ridiculous. And it doesn't end there. The family is so stupid. They get caught in so many dumb situations, and they just stare and gawk. They do nothing. There are so many scenes in this movie where a dinosaur is approaching someone, and they just go, "It's behind me, isn't it?" And they'll like slowly turn and look at it, and they'll just stand there and stare. And then eventually they like start walking away. But because the dinosaurs are moving so slowly, they don't even need to like jog. They just get away every time. And it's so painful to watch. On top of that, there are no scenes in this movie where dinosaurs interact with each other. There is no big dinosaur fight. There isn't even a scene where like dinosaurs interact at all. Like where they just bump into each other. Or they're just around. Every like encounter is completely separate and feels like it was like a short film and they were all stitched together somehow, because everything feels so disjointed. So you have all of these characters that are absolutely brain dead and making the stupidest decisions, and yet you don't even get any payoff with the dinosaurs being good, because there's no fight scenes, the chases are really boring and predictable, and some of the new creatures are cool, but the main ones that they hyped up are such letdowns. The Mutodons that appeared in like 10 seconds of a final trailer were easily the coolest creatures in the movie. And yet the D-Rex, which they hyped up as being like the big feature in this, was far and away the most boring and pointless addition of the whole movie. It had like 5 minutes of screen time at the end, and it did nothing. Absolutely nothing. And it was so pathetic. It was so unbelievably pathetic. So that, I'm just ranting, but I want to kind of break this down a little bit more. There are so many scenes in this movie that make no sense. In the beginning, there's a scene where Zora, who's the main protagonist, meets up with the main bad guy, who's clearly, obviously, he's not a bad guy in the beginning. He's a twist villain. He's not. It's stupid. But they meet the scientist guy, who's supposed to tell them what to do. And, you know, he's like the nerd, right? And so they're in a museum, and they're taking everything down because apparently dinosaurs aren't interesting anymore, and they're all dying off, so like zoos can't have them anymore. So for some reason, that means a museum that holds dead ones is gonna get out of business, but the dinosaurs that are rapidly disappearing from the earth means that people are losing interest in museums. That's so backwards, and it makes no sense. But the worst part is they're in the museum, and this guy is explaining. Explaining is a nice word. It's just info dumping about the creatures that they're gonna have to go collect DNA from. There's 3, and they choose them because they're big for some reason. It's kind of explained, but it doesn't make that much sense. And so there are 3 dinosaurs. There's a mosasaur. There's a titanosaur. And there's a Quetzalcoatlus. All 3 of these creatures are in the museum on display. What are the odds that happens? Because those are pretty much the only like main displays in this room. So either they just miraculously chose those dinosaurs and they were in the museum, or they set up the museum that they're taking down to showcase the animals they're going after on this secret covert mission. It's just so lazy. It's ridiculously lazy. And if you just look at it for 5 seconds, you think, this is the dumbest writing I've ever seen. They said, okay, we need to explain to the audience what we're going to be seeing. And even though we already know what a mosasaur looks like, we know what a Quetzalcoatlus looks like from the other movies, and all of us know what a big sauropod looks like because they're in all the movies too, for some reason they had to show them as skeletons to be like, oh, who's that Pokemon? We already know what those Pokemon are. Just go to the places and find the creatures. There's at least a little bit of surprise when you finally see them. But there isn't at all. They don't even care. So they all get on this boat to go track down these creatures. One of them has a gun, and it's a weird sciencey bullshit gun. They're all mercenaries. They all do illegal shit. And none of them have a gun or a single weapon of any kind. They don't even have a harpoon. So they're going on this mission with one puny gun that's shooting really stupid bullet thingies that one guy holds onto. And the only chance he gets to use it, he misses every single shot. So why are these mercenaries, who are supposed to be really prepared for this mission, on this big fancy boat, why did none of them have anything to protect themselves? Like, why? It makes no sense. The only logical solution is that the writers didn't want to write around them having lethal options. They just wanted them to run away being stupid. So you have them doing that, and they just make so many choices in the movie that just don't add up at all. There's a scene where they're getting chased by a mosasaur and a bunch of spinosaurs. The mosasaur's goal is clearly to eat the people on the boat. That is also the goal of the spinosaurs. So none of that makes sense. They're working together. If the mosasaur is hungry, it can just eat the spinosaurs. It is 3 times the size and fully aquatic. And also, if the mosasaur is eating the people on the boat, or trying to, what does it need the spinosaurs for? The spinosaurs, because they can climb up onto the boat, are just going to eat the people themselves. What is the mosasaur gaining from that? It makes no sense. And the spinosaurs don't even need to be there to flip the boat over, because the mosasaur doesn't do that. It just jumps around the boat. And it's like a whale. But it clearly doesn't have an actual goal to eat these people, other than the spinosaurs, who are just going to eat the people themselves. They're not going to split it up. They're not going to divvy it up like a bunch of siblings and share. They're dinosaurs and aquatic reptiles. They aren't smart like that. They aren't going to do that. That makes no sense for them. That makes no sense that these Spinosaurs and Mosasaur are going out to a big metal object in the ocean when there are creatures in the ocean they can eat already. The Mosasaur can eat whales and dolphins and things that'll actually fill it up. It can eat the Spinosaurs that are swimming in the water. And the Spinosaurs can also eat those same things and eat on land. It makes no sense that they're working together. It makes no sense that they aren't eating each other. But they just wanted that there for spectacle. And the writers didn't give a single shit about how that ended up happening. So anyways, they're in the boat. They finally get to the island after they're getting chased and people are getting eaten. The stupid Australian guy who was in charge of the only gun they had has already died because he missed every shot. So they're approaching the land. The only hope they have is to reach the shallows. So what do? Do they A, take the fucking boat and go to the shallows? Do they B, all jump off the boat before they reach the shallows where the Mosasaur is chasing them? Or do they C, dump all of their important items into the deep water before they get to the shallows? You're wrong. It's option B and C. They do both of those stupid things. The Mosasaur is chasing the boat. So, instead of staying in the boat and getting to the shore, the people jump into the water with the Mosasaur, which for some reason doesn't care. Because once the boat reaches the shallow water, the Mosasaur turns around and everybody else is magically already on the island. So, then you have the main captain of the boat. He stays on the boat, and he holds on for dear life to this boat as it crashes onto the land. Why didn't everyone do that? That was the goal. So why did he say, save yourselves, get off the boat before we get to safety, jump in the water? Why? That doesn't make sense. They just wanted to split them up, which they barely even did anyway, so it made no sense. And so, I don't even know how to explain this. It's just, there are so many pieces to this movie that just fry my brain. But anyways, they get onto land. They're finally there, safe and sound, even though none of what they did makes sense. Now they have all of their important equipment floating on the surface, slowly floating to them. So this one girl goes to one of these big crates of things that are somehow floating, and it finally lands on the beach after the Spinosaurs are still following them. The main scientist guy says, careful. He yells this so everyone can hear him. He says, careful, they're amphibious. For those of you who are stupid, amphibious means that creatures can crawl onto land and the water. I'm sure all of you know this, and I'm sure that all of the people in the movie know this. And yet, this girl is so preoccupied, she goes away from the water where the Spinosaurs are. She turns around, even though she's still in the water, she just turns around toward the land, to where this big crate is. She starts unpacking it, and what do you know? A Spinosaurus comes up behind her and grabs her and eats her. Why is no one yelling at this lady to look behind her? Why isn't she looking behind her to see where the Spinosauruses are after one guy already just explained that they can go on land and eat her? Why does she stay there? It makes no sense at all. So anyways, they get onto land. They start looking for this village, apparently. There's a village where they can be saved because they had a contingency plan where they're going to fly a helicopter over the island and pick them up in a couple days if the signal of the boat goes out. Fair enough. That's fine. So, the family that they're trying to rescue, they get separated from the mercenaries. And so they go off to go seek safety at the village. And the other people, obviously they want to finish their mission, so they go try to do that. In the meantime, there are so many encounters that just happen, and almost none of the characters die. There's a family of 4. They make it throughout the whole movie, and yet half the movie is dedicated to them surviving. We know they're going to survive. This has been made clear, because it's a PG-13 movie. They're not going to kill off kids and their father. That's not going to happen. So half of this movie is just not interesting at all, because we know they're going to make it and we know they're going to be fine. The only part that could have worked is the mercenaries. Only one of them, after they land on the beach, gets eaten. One of them. And one other guy gets eaten at the very end of the movie. So they have like 10 encounters where somebody should die, and no one does. So already you can't take anything they're doing seriously. And they're just clearly going to make it. Like, most of the characters are going to make it. And so there's like one or two who you know are going to be cannon fodder because they're not focused on. But then outside of that, it's like, why are you even encountering dinosaurs? What is the point of this movie if I know that they're going to make it out? That just doesn't track. But anyways, one of the dumbest scenes is this girl is over by the creek because her stupid idiot father, I'll get into that too, walks around and he breaks his fucking leg somehow. Or he hurts it in the boat scene. And so now he's hobbling around and they're thinking, oh, we should get in a boat and go to the river because then we can put him in the boat and get to where we're going. And for some reason, the girl goes by herself. The rest of them just sit back and let her fucking do all the work for some reason. So she goes over there. There's a T-Rex sleeping right next to her. So what does she do? Does she A, decide to just walk away? B, does she decide to quietly get the boat and leave? Or C, does she get eaten? Believe it or not, it's none of these options. She does try to get the boat, but she can't even be bothered to pick it up. She just drags it across this dock, knowing full well it's making a lot of noise. And, shockingly, it wakes up the T-Rex. So now, they're in the water with a boat with no paddles, just floating down the stream. The T-Rex wakes up, it walks over to them very slowly, and it finally gets to them and tips the boat over. So now, instead of like going and eating them, it goes downstream from where they are, and it kind of just sits there like a bear catching salmon with its mouth open. I thought that was a cool detail, except for the fact that it misses every bite. It's not like a gun, where it's shooting some running guy. It's a creature that has full control over its body. It can see what it wants to eat, and it misses. How does that make any sense? Like, it wouldn't miss. This keeps happening in this movie, where creatures just miss. If you have your phone on the table, and it's just sitting there, you go and you reach it and you pick it up. You don't grab over there and hit the table. You don't miss the phone. You don't grab the air. You grab the phone. The dinosaur should be able to grab the thing that's in the water that's just sitting there and eat it. But because it's this family, obviously none of them can get eaten. But you know, the movie needs to happen, so it has to be all scary and shit. And so 3 of them, they get to this rock, and it's very conveniently like this little crevice that the T-Rex can't fit through, even though it's in a river. So, you know, if you know basic geology, you know that just isn't how rivers work. So there's this crack in the rock, and they are able to make it through there, and the T-Rex clearly isn't. But then the littlest kid, the tiny daughter, is still in the boat, and is upside down. And the T-Rex grabs the boat and shakes it around, and they do this fake-out death for this, like, 4-year-old. So clearly people don't think she's dead because she's 4, and it's a PG-13 Jurassic Park movie. And so the father does the least convincing fucking acting job I've ever seen. He goes like, "No, my daughter," and he's just like sitting there crying. And then 5 seconds later, she like pops back up out of the water and she's alive. And he's like, "Yay!" And it's like no one reacts like that. And there's so many scenes where people are just sitting around waiting for another person to save themselves. And you're supposed to like these people. Like this father multiple times lets his kids do the important shit, and he just stands there. Like he literally just stands there. And yeah, he's like a broken leg or whatever, but he's seen multiple times just like limping around. Like it's a minor inconvenience. And yet he can't be fucking bothered to go try and save his kid, even though it's a big T-Rex and he has no hope of helping. A real human being would try, because that's human behavior. No one just sits there and yells for their fucking tiny child to be able to outrun a T-Rex. Like you either try to sacrifice yourself or distract it or anything, but he just sits there and watches, and it's so painful because you're supposed to root for them, but you just can't because they're horrible people that are entirely selfish. And so you go through the whole movie like this. All of them, they finally meet back up. They're at the dock, and this is kind of where everything comes full circle for the antagonist of this movie. Because previously, there's a reason I didn't mention this, it's because it's not important. Previously, when they're on the boat, the older daughter of this family of 4, she falls off the boat. And the antagonist guy just watches her as she falls in. He's like, he couldn't be bothered to save her. And so at the end, he whips out a gun that he found in the jungle. And he's like, haha, I got you now. Give me the blood samples. I'm gonna go make money. And the main characters up till this point were like fine with that, but then slowly the scientist dude convinced them to open source it somehow. Don't know how that's gonna work out for them, but they're just like, no, we gotta give this technology to the world so that lives can be saved. Because if this one guy takes it back to his company, he's gonna charge so much money for it, and it's not gonna be for most people. And it's not going to save lives. And it's like, it's forced politics, first and foremost. But secondly, these are mercenaries. They shouldn't give a shit. They are there exclusively to make money. And suddenly they have morals of a Disney princess? Like, no, they wouldn't. I'm sorry. That's just not how that works. But anyways, the antagonist guy who we're supposed to hate because he didn't jump into creature-infested water to save this idiot fucking child who couldn't be bothered to hold onto a railing, is now like staring at them with a gun. And so he's finally got the DNA or the blood, where the fuck that he's taking, and he drives off. He gets in this Jeep. Keep in mind, they are at the dock where the helicopter is supposed to be. They're at this village, which ends up being like a research facility. And he takes the Jeep and he drives off. He goes through the jungle. He goes up and down a couple hills. And the other characters are trying to survive the mutodons, which are the only cool things in this movie. And there are a few cliche scenes where they once again recreate the Velociraptor scenes. And it's so fucking painful to get through because it's just do something interesting. Like, is that impossible for you people? But anyways, they try to survive the mutodons. Finally, the D-Rex shows up. The stupid fucking idiot-looking creature that looks like it's from Star Wars and looks nothing like any dinosaur ever that for some reason they made, even though it's like a goddamn kaiju that they clearly wouldn't be able to restrain because it's also smart. So like, who knows why the hell they made it to begin with, but now it's like out and is roaming around and it's supposed to be this cool big guy. And the main antagonist guy, he gets to his location, which is the dock. That's where he started, and that's where he ends. He runs into the big creature, and he gets eaten. And that is all the D-Rex does. It slowly picks up this guy and eats him, and then all the other characters run away. So they finally get to this boat by the dock that's just conveniently sitting there, and so they all get into it, but they don't quite have enough time. So one of the mercenary guys is like, hey, big stupid fucking creature, come over here, and he whips out the flare, because of course he does. And so he starts running away. He starts very slowly and awkwardly, like walking through like waist deep water. So the creature's like slowly walking after him, taking fucking baby steps so he can get a little further, even though it's very clear the end goal is just to eat him. So it could just like, I don't know, reach out and grab him and eat him already. But it follows him to like this little inlet where he clearly is trapped. Like, this guy clearly can't go anywhere. The creature's staring down his throat, and he yells back at it. And then it cuts back to the other people, and they're like, no, Duncan, you're dead, oh no. Surely he can't be dead, it's Duncan. We love Duncan, right? We all love Duncan. And I shit you not, they start leaving, and he produces a flare out of nowhere, and they go back and get him, and he's fine. How? When did this happen? We just saw him almost getting eaten because the creature's staring at him, roaring at him, and he's just sitting there. He's got nowhere to go. This giant kaiju is literally a foot away from him and clearly wants him dead, and then he's just fine? And to make matters worse, they pick him up, and then the D-Rex keeps chasing them as they get away. So clearly, it still wants to eat them. It's not like it suddenly evolved empathy. It still wants to eat them, but it just left the other guy alone for some reason, and then he changed his mind? Like what? Like, none of that made sense. It was such a pathetic way to end the movie, because nothing happens. It's just big goofy creature just standing there, and everybody escapes, and they all live happily ever after. And it's just like, what is happening? What is this movie? What was the point of introducing this creature if it's not going to do anything? So you go through this whole film, this whole movie, and you leave the theater and you're like, wow, everything that happened just happened. They did not care to make any of it make sense. They just forced situations to force situations to have cool looking shots, even though half the CGI is really mid at best, and half the shots are just boring and dumb anyway. And it's so hard to describe this movie, and the reason I didn't make like an edited video is because there's just no point. There's no point in trying to break this down because so little effort went into this movie. So all I can match it with is just a rant about how stupid it is. Because you truly have to watch it to just see how unbelievably incompetent it is. You don't have to have the plot really spoiled for you because you know what it's going to be before you get into the theater. And it doesn't help that the trailers showed everything in the entire movie. But it's just like what was the point of any of it? They just forced all these scenes to happen and didn't care how they got there. And none of the scenes that they were trying to get to were cool. So you have no setup and you have no payoff. Why movie? Why make that? They could have, at this point, just gone back and done a faithful rendition of Michael Crichton's original book. Made it rated R. People would have loved it. People would have watched it. But instead they make this stupid, contrived, fetch quest, save this family, do this shit, movie, and it's not interesting. There's no part of it that made me excited. And usually when there's a movie like this, where it's just okay, it's okay because there was potential, and that potential was wasted somehow or slightly mishandled, and so that leads to a kind of mid-experience. This was not that. This was just nothing. There's nothing to take away from this, other than the fact that they just gave up. They genuinely just gave up with this movie. They didn't try at all. At all. Like, it was somehow more contrived and less developed than Dominion. I don't even know how that's possible. But anyways, that's pretty much all I've got. If you want to let me know in the comments how you felt about it, go for it. I don't think my take is all that controversial though, so we'll see. I am interested to see if people disagree and what they disagree with. But for now, that's it. I apologize that this is really lazily put together, but again, I didn't know how to edit this into a real video and have it pay off because there's next to nothing to talk about. It's just such a bad movie. So yeah. Thank you for watching and sticking all the way through the end. I really appreciate that. And have a wonderful day.